Still, people are still coming out. So who knows how many we'll have here when
That's fine.
we're done. So we've got the Special Veterans Day panel with a special guest here, Father Frank Munoz from St. Peter's Del Mar, who's a Navy chaplain, is our moderator. And then just in case not everybody in the room knows our St. Bart's veterans here, we've got Spring, how do you pronounce your last name? Plissick. Spring Plissick, Mike Fuqua, and Kevin Berger. Spring and Mike are both former members of the Navy, and Kevin is a current Marine. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
Thank you.
Guys take it away.
Thanks, JD. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, as a way of further introducing myself, I'm a Navy chaplain and active duty. I'm currently director of CREO, which is it's a ministry that the Navy Chaplain Corps has. We do marriage retreats, workshops on resiliency, and I've been in that post for about a year. Prior to that, I was the command chaplain at the Naval Hospital at Camp Pendleton. That's a beautiful hospital that you see going up to 5 now. It's the face of Camp Pendleton. And prior to that, I did a year of a residency at Balboa Naval Hospital, a pastoral care residency, and at the VA hospital. Before that, I was with the Marines at the 3rd Marine Air Wing in Miramar. Did a tour in Afghanistan in 2010. And before that, I was on a ship out of Japan, Sasebo, Japan, on USS Juno, and where I was at sea for about 17 out of 25 months I was out there. And I also did a tour. My first tour was at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot here in San Diego, where our mission was to make Marines. So with that, that's my background. And then Spring was a medical service corps officer. Would you tell us a little bit about your time in the service?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I started out wanting to become an optometrist, and when I was looking at options for financial aid, I found out that the military could pay for optometry school. But it was a competitive program that I applied for twice before I made it in, which for me at the time it was a dream come true, really, to be able to go to the graduate program I wanted to and have it covered, and then be able to come on active duty and guaranteed job. So I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, where I met my husband, who was in the Navy also at the time. And then he left active duty to go into law enforcement, and I ended up getting reassigned to Washington, D.C. And both our kids were born when I was still on active duty, which was a special challenge. And I made the decision to leave active duty in order to work part-time, so I served 8 years. And I've been in the reserves ever since.
And Mike.
Well, I'm the old timer. I joined the Navy in 1974 and retired in 1999 as captain. I was a helicopter pilot. Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to be a helicopter pilot or a forest ranger. And so I was walking down the student union one day, and I couldn't find a job in forestry, so there was a Navy recruiter with a picture of a helicopter. The next thing I knew, I was in Pensacola, Florida, learning to fly helicopters. And then 25 years later, I was done. But lots of stuff in between. I'm hoping Patty comes because this wasn't about me, it was about us. It was about her supporting me and us working as a team. Both our dads were Navy World War II veterans. We stayed in 25 years. I had commands, we traveled around, we had great times in Washington, Pensacola, Monterey. Just a wonderful career. And both our son went to the Naval Academy. We did 8 years in the Navy, and our son-in-law went to the Naval Academy. He did 8 years in the Navy. So pretty strong Navy family.
That's awesome.
And I'm the new timer. My active duty time started in 2009. I was started at Purdue in 2005, and I was in the Naval ROTC. At the time I started there, I was a Navy option, which meant I was kind of in the pipeline to be a Navy officer. Over the course, I guess, midway through college, I decided, you know, maybe the Marines are gonna be a better fit for me. So I got a transition scholarship, and then along the way the Marine Corps aviation pipeline works is if you qualify to be a Marine officer, they can give you a guaranteed contract for flight school. It's a little bit different than the way the Navy does. You actually, in the Navy, you have to compete for a slot, but in the Marine Corps, if you physically qualify and academically qualify, they'll just say, we'll send you to flight school. You don't have to compete with peers, but you do have to get through the Marine Corps officer training pipeline, so OCS, to start that off. So yeah, 2009, started active duty, did my basic officer training in Quantico, Virginia, and then following that, went down to Pensacola for flight school, and the various stages of flight school is a solid 2-year timeline. At the time I finished that, I was already 4 years in the Marine Corps, so I go to New River, North Carolina, where the V-22 FRS, or Fleet Replacement Squadron, is located, and I pin on captain at the there's not too many people that happens for, but because of the delays in training along the way, a lot of us, more than at any time previously in the Marine Corps, there is a lot of captains that haven't even started in the fleet. The fleet meaning operational squadrons that deploy. So then, after completing that training, it was 2014, spring of 2014, moved here to California, and this is where we lived longer than anywhere else since we lived together. So we're 2.5 years up here, and I have deployed twice to the Middle East, Kuwait, which serves the whole AO, but most of our missions were focused in Iraq and Syria, as you can imagine. Yeah, 7 years of service so far, and another 3 or so. And Carrie is my wife. She's sitting in the back right here. We have a little boy, a 1-year-old Jacob.
Little?
Yeah. He's enormous. It's hard to keep up with him. So I guess that's about all I have.
Yeah. So San Diego is a very special place because so many people here in San Diego have a relationship to the military in one way or another. I mean, I think something like 30% of our population is military or retired military. And so a forum like this is a good thing for us to reflect on, given the large numbers of military families that we have here and in the area. I'm wondering what some of the biggest challenges that you've experienced in the military so far during your time of service, reflecting on that, and where did you find support in your tour of duties in the military?
I can try to kick that off. I think for me, because I'm so invested in family, the hardest thing is being away from family. When you're far away from home, it's better nowadays because you have limited internet access, but you do have a way to communicate with your family at home, sending emails, even Skype at some points you can use Skype. So it's a lot different than it used to be, but it's still hard to be away, and loneliness is something you struggle with. But aside from that, as far as the duty of your service in the military, I feel like just being in a forward deployable unit, the operational tempo is so high you hardly have a chance to breathe. And the Marine Corps tries to do more with less. We have we're very undermanned. There's a lot of us that are doing double and triple duty. We've got many jobs. We wear several hats, trying to take care of all the squadron's needs, and it wears on you. It's not something that's tiring in a week. It's over the course of time. It's cumulative strain, and it gets old.
Yeah, the cumulative stress, I having did my own tour in Afghanistan, the days are long. There is no, well, it's 5 o'clock, let's just go home. You wake up in the morning and with 20 or 30 other of your best friends in the room, and then your day goes until basically you go to bed at night, and that's your day. And, right, Mike?
Yeah, I think the loneliness aspect is interesting, is really difficult. I mean, they say that the most unbelievable thing is a 1,000-foot ship carrying 5,000 people can be one of the most loneliest places in the world. But everybody's living their own life and having their own demons, and but you're working so hard that you don't think about a lot. But for me, one of the big challenges I found is it was really sort of one of the things you strive for your whole career, most people, is to go up the ladder and to achieve command and to be in charge. But once you get there, the burden of command can be difficult. And all the things that you don't think about. The military is a hierarchy, it's a vertical hierarchy, and there's one guy in charge. And once you achieve that one guy in charge, there's things that come along that you don't think about. Like calling a young airman into my stateroom and telling him I just got a telegram that his baby had died. Or, people under your command, you having to send them places that you know that's very dangerous. Or just all the day-to-day things. So having command was the best thing that ever happened, but it was also hugely burdensome. And you have to turn to faith in those times. At least I did.
So that brings up faith, and so where have you found that intersection of faith in the military? Has there been a place that has been found for you? I know when I served, I also served as a hospital corpsman from 1976 to 1980, and so I was actually running away from seminary is what I did. So I was 18, and I was about to go to seminary, and I thought, I do not want to be a celibate Catholic priest, so I'm going to go off to the Navy for 4 years. And during that time, it was the chaplains who were most able to help me, and I said to myself, gosh, if I ever get a chance to be in ministry, I'd love to come back and be a chaplain, which I ended up doing, and was able to contact actually one of the Catholic priests who had been my chaplain. After I became the chaplain at the Naval Hospital at Camp Pendleton, I called him and I said, do you remember me? I was 20 years ago, I was in your office and you were helping me and as a chaplain at the hospital, and now I'm a hospital chaplain myself. And so it was great to be able to find him at his parish in New York and be able to call him. But the chaplains helped me. I'm just wondering, where have you found, again, that intersection of faith and the military?
I wish I could tell you that I had a very consistent and strong faith relationship with the chaplains and the ship, and that it was embroiled in everything we did. That wasn't true. Everybody's too busy, working too hard. So you find it where you can find it.
Yeah.
And it was, for me, it was very sporadic. It was important. And I guess maybe, thinking about it, maybe you find it when you need it. So,
Exactly. At those critical moments, right? I've been fortunate enough to be at those critical moments in my career. I can't tell you the number of people I have helped who were experiencing suicidal ideations and attempts of suicide, and or just failing marriages. I've been at that juncture as well, with way too many people to count. Any other? I also want to make sure that I've got opportunity for you to ask questions. Anybody have any questions of our panel so far? So we've talked about deployments being difficult, and did you want to add anything on the deployments for yourself?
I think, on the topic of the loneliness, maintaining the relationship with your family, it's extremely important. Unfortunately, the reality is a lot of relationships, people struggle to nurture the way they need to. For us, we had Skype and we had email, but just sharing things, whether it be something we saw in the news or a funny video, or there's so many ways. Carrie did an amazing job keeping me in a positive mindset. She was the light and when things were at their darkest. And I'm very grateful that I was able to see pictures of Jacob and videos. She just kept a steady stream of that stuff, and that was a lifeline.
Back in the days
So-
when Mike and I were serving,
Yeah.
it was mail, and,
I was gonna say, 7-month deployment, I was really lucky if I called home 5 or 6 times. And so what we do is, this is really funny, we send letters and we number the letters. So
Right.
then you get a letter that's out of sequence. And they talk about something that happened, so, yeah, it's just difficult. It's really difficult to maintain that contact.
I was very blessed to have a wife, or a fiance at the time, who wrote me twice a day.
Wow.
Who's sitting right here. And when I was in Okinawa for a year and a half, she wrote me a card during the day at lunchtime, and then at night she would write me these 9-10 page letters. And I was the envy of all of the corpsmen at the clinic, because the guys who were married, sometimes didn't get any mail for a week or two. And I was getting mail every single day, and it just drove them all crazy. So, thank you again for that.
Yeah, there's
But
a
yes.
big jealousy factor in the mail.
Yes, the mail is a big jealousy factor. And, but yes, when I was in Afghanistan at Camp Leatherneck, by the time I was just about leaving there, they had Wi-Fi throughout the barracks areas. And so people were Skyping, people were talking almost every day back home, which is an unheard of thing, ages ago. And so that support really is really important. I'm wondering how, as a parish here in San Diego, what's the role for a church in all of this, and what are the ways that we can support our veterans and our people who are on active duty? That's always a question that gets asked of me to churches that are very, very close to military bases, and we're obviously very, very close to the Miramar here as well. So I'm wondering, if you as a parish have any thoughts? Yes.
I grew up in a military family, and when Desert Storm came, I had trained in debriefing and in case there was another attack, or with a lot of other chaplains. I was a layperson that was chosen from my church. But we found that when families were deployed, they would never ask for help. We had a whole program set up with Stephen Ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with a fellow who came out from Los Angeles, a chaplain, but really just private counseling was all he could do, and we kept trying to service the families, but they would never pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to connect. There's some services, it's pretty meager though, because a lot of these people were reserves.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're scattered and not at one base, or they are at one base, but they live all over. So we were trying to even incorporate a way to do all the Stephen ministries all over the state of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
But none of it came, it was like we were all standing there, but we couldn't do anything if none of the families came forward.
Right.
Because there is some services with the military, and so I don't know how to bridge the gap, because there certainly is a will to help.
It's very challenging. When a service member deploys, often they're leaving a spouse behind who's probably not from the geographical area that they're stationed at right now. And so now she's alone with kids, and all you've got are the other spouses, perhaps. And there's a lot of kind of siloing, where people just are sort of by themselves. And so one of the things that I found that we loved about the parish I'm at St. Peter's right now is that when I deployed to Afghanistan in 2010, right, Stella? The
Yes.
parish really just sort of hovered
Yeah.
around you and
Called all the time.
called and took care of her. And I came back deeply appreciative of the parish for the support that they gave her, and increased my level of activity at the parish to the point that now I've been on staff now for the last couple of years. But it was that getting into into her life, and that really, I think, made the difference for us. And so I thank you for having tried to do that. It's hard, and you've got to sort of sometimes penetrate and there's so much of it, in the military, there's such a culture of self-sufficiency, right? That we can do this on our own, we don't need anybody to help us. And so that kind of creates a sort of culture of independence and disconnection. And because we move every 3 years or so, we learn how to disconnect from people very quickly and then reconnect very quickly. So what military families are good at is if they come to your parish for the first time, is they can actually connect really fast if they need to. And if you can just introduce them and make the pathways clear. In fact, that should be something that every visitor to your parish should know how to do, which is, how do I arrive and get past the bulletin that has 30 different ministries? You know how you go to a restaurant and the menu is just too big, and so you end up not choosing anything? Or you go to buy jeans and there's 30 different types of jeans and you forget it. I can't, I just want to buy a pair of jeans, you know. But military people can actually find, if you have a clear pathway, they can connect pretty well. In the military, when we arrive at a new command, there's a check-in process. You got to go to all these different places to check in and have them, you know, give you whatever they have to give you. If you had the same kind of process for a military family or even a new visitor, that would be a great way for them to learn how to connect. Would you say that would be helpful? Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that Chris Harris has really done is promote the small group interaction, which I think is really important, because that's the way that you learn that things are like that are happening in people's lives. Because you don't really know. I mean, you know, we go to church on Sunday, we talk to each other, blah, blah, blah. But these little small groups that Chris has really promoted get you to know people. And then you start to know what's really happening in somebody's life. I agree with you, it's very difficult. I mean, St. Bart's isn't gonna penetrate the Miramar, you know, bureaucracy, but individually, when people are here, we can help them if we know about it.
Absolutely.
So actually, Spring just joined our church. Kevin and Carrie joined our church as recently. So what was that experience for you? What was the thought process about finding your parish, let alone off base, let alone sustaining that?
Yep, for us it was, we wanted a place that was close, so that it would be easy to go to church. And, you know, in the course of our time together, we had kind of, you know, I was born and raised Roman Catholic. She was born and raised in a non-denominational Christian church. By the time, you know, I went to college, you know, my parents had divorced when I was a little kid, and my dad's side was Protestant, and my mom's side of the family is the Catholic side. And so I had to make a decision, and at that stage of my life, I decided, you know, Roman Catholicism is not for me. I want to call myself a Christian, and with no kind of denominational affiliation. So, you know, we were in a college ministry. She met some people. It happened to be a Baptist ministry at Purdue, and that's where she got connected. And we felt perfectly at home there. And the church we went to on Sundays was also Baptist, but it was just such a good fit. The college age group of kids was kind of led by a Purdue professor, physics professor, and you know, we had a lot of discussions on science and faith, and a lot of focus on that. It was just an incredible time. Since then, we sort of have gone from the non-denominational type church to more liturgical style. So we've been to, you know, several churches, Presbyterian, Baptist, and Episcopal. And when we moved here, we felt incredibly welcomed. I think we were pretty certain after the first time, because we had been to many churches in the past, so we had some experience under our belt in what to look for, and we felt so welcomed. It was very warm here, and this is a tight family that we wanted to be a part of. It was rather easy, you know, and I guess a simple, you know, we arrived into town, and a simple Google search, you can find churches all over the map very quickly.
Yes.
With that said, was there anything did you feel, I think that's what you were kind of touching on, and also Mark was touching on, was there something that you knew that you could kind of be distilled down into, these are some, welcoming, activities for folks that are military that might be you're a little more transient, you may be here alone without family, all that kind of thing, that maybe they were addressing those directly, or is there a way that maybe they could?
No, I wouldn't say that, and I wouldn't say that being a military family sets us apart. As far as faith goes, it doesn't distinguish us from any other Christians.
Well, I was just asking, as a follow-up to the lady in blue, who was saying, how do we bridge that gap? If there were some families that there's this whole ministry, or there's this whole segment of welcoming community kind of thing, that is geared towards some of the particulars of what it takes, for military families to find a place.
I can comment on that.
Yeah.
I think that, it's critical, either the first or the second time that you see a new family, that you immediately put them in touch with one or two key people that they can have a connection with. And the biggest one is the kids. Who else has kids the same age?
Yeah.
Because the kids, they're kind of adrift, when they get moved. And, if they're super little, it's still important because you need to have that connection. So, and, Father Mark is great at this because he kind of knows who's out there. He knows how to bring people together. I mean, not that he's gonna be able to do it every single time, but, okay, I see that person has a 3-year-old, these people have a 3-year-old.
Precisely.
Or this is a young couple without kids, here's another young couple without any kids. And you just gotta make that connection right away.
Matching
And then
people
they're-
up so that
yeah.
a newcomer has a coach, essentially, who's gonna coach them into the life of the parish, would be helpful. So if you find a military family, so for example, you're the military family, you'd be a great person to connect to another similarly like age military family. So not having you connecting to somebody who's a senior would be appropriate, but another couple with kids maybe just the way that you are would be.
And I would say that was very easy at St. Bart's. We quickly learned that there was a young adult ministry, Theology on Tap. That was exactly what we needed. And we quickly met everyone in that group, and it's a Tuesday hangout, but then I think we were doing a once-a-month gathering at someone's house. And we're doing something similar to that now, and it's still a good fit. Even with a kid, it's harder to make gatherings and make it to meetings, but we do. We'll keep Jacob up late to be with our friends in this group.
And that's a good lesson, because that's actually something the military does. When somebody is reporting to a new command, before they arrive, they are assigned a person at the command who will help them with this transition process. So this is a familiar kind of process that they understand. So, one just yes, Mark.
Just a thread for me in my heart going similar is the flexibility. So I had to learn when I arrived here the flexibility that the parish needs to have. So we're used to someone coming on board, joining, starting to pledge, put the kids in Christian Ed, they start teaching, and they're going to teach for 3 or 4 years. They're going to do this and that. And Kevin and Carrie taught me right away, when he's deployed, Carrie needed community. So whether baby or not, she needed help out with youth groups, she needed this, she needed that. And so she verbalized that to us, so I knew what to do. She was teaching me. Right? That was great. But the minute Kevin showed up, Carrie disappeared. They showed up to worship, but she's like, I'm all family as long as he's in town.
Right.
And the minute he got deployed again, boom, she's back in the system again, right?
Yeah,
And then he had a medical issue that brought him back early, and we all praying, and he showed up, and boom, right? It happened again. And that elasticity, I it's a little different now for Spring and Mac. When Mac goes off as he serves our country, it's just a different energy. And can you just speak, because you're living on the Navy side, on the military side, but also on the parish side. Just talk about that flexibility a little bit to raise our
Yeah,
maybe I just did.
I think that's what happens is that when the service member deploys, the family dynamic changes. the mom is now father and taking care of all the issues at home. You know, there's a whole new role.
Where the
that-
father is the mother.
Exactly, yes. Yes. So there's a whole new way of organizing the home, you know. And we, you know, one of the things that chaplains do is we brief the service member and say, okay, you know, you've been gone now for 6 months or a year, and it's gonna take a while for family life to readjust with you coming home. And now that when you arrive, keep in mind your wife has probably created whole new rules and structure for family life. And she's had to take care of everything. And now you're coming in and saying, well, I'm back. Everybody's got to reshift back into the old mode. And she's going like, well, wait a minute, just a second here. I've been in charge here for 9 months, and now you're coming back and want things to go back to the way they were, you know. No, not gonna happen. So we tell them, be ready. There's going to be a transition process, and you've got to just flow into it. Your kid's got to get reacquainted with you, and she's nodding her head. My wife is nodding her head. And yes.
The Cubs do not go there. They
Yes.
go here.
I have a new place for things to go.
What is this doing here?
Yeah, and so there's a lot of readjustments within the family, and the tempo. He talked about the operational tempo of work, where you're up, 16, 18 hours a day working, and now you come home, and there's just a stressful transition. So yes,
From spring, because you're the other way around. Your husband
Yeah.
was the one that was at home. How was
Well,
that?
actually not.
Not at that time. No.
He's
No.
here now, but.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I deployed when I was on active
Oh,
duty.
okay.
She was on active duty as well.
So you both deployed.
They both.
No, I didn't deploy.
Okay.
Oh, so but when you had your kids, so you were local and.
I was shore-based.
Okay.
Based on shore.
I was just curious how that worked for you. If there was any adjustments that you guys had to make.
Yeah, so I'm still the one that travels the most, and she was on active duty when we had the kids,
Okay.
but yeah, in a shore command, so not a lot of, occasional short trips that she took.
And did you feel that way, what my husband's describing, the readjusting and?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I'm just gone for a week,
Uh-huh.
like just to try to get the kids to,
To listen.
yeah. And we didn't have, when I took my 1 year deployment, we didn't have children at the time. But yeah, it was still, very tough, obviously.
so there's just lots of adjustments, and we as chaplains provide some of that training. Hey, we do it before they leave. We prepare the families. We have these what are called pre-deployment briefings, and we prepare the family for this transition that's about to happen. And then we have people, while the deployment is happening, there are what are called family readiness officers at Marine Corps bases. And the family readiness officer's job is to basically be a conduit of communication between the service member and the families, to provide events to bring families together for support so that they don't feel the isolation. Some families engage the family readiness officers, some do not. And they identify problems that might be happening in the family and then provide support to those families. This is very different today's families are supported in ways that were never supported back in the day when Mike was serving on active duty, for example. Very, very different. We have deeper appreciation for veterans today than ever before. When service members came back from Vietnam, you all remember, they didn't get the support that service members get today. People are always thanking me thank you for your service, when they find out I'm on active duty. That didn't happen, in the 70s when veterans came back from Vietnam. The fact that we're having a forum today is testament to the fact that we've got a whole new way of dealing with the veteran. So I wanted to just touch on this question, if I could, which is the role of being a Christian and serving in the military. That's something maybe
Thank you.
some of you have not touched on before, but maybe they have, maybe not. But I thought, well, is this compatible? I mean, is it okay for a Christian to serve in the military, and what should be our role. I had a professor recently at Fuller Seminary where I'm studying, David Augsburger, who's a very well-known theologian and writer. He's Mennonite, and he's a pacifist. So they told me this week, you probably don't want him as your thesis advisor or your dissertation advisor, because he's not really cool on chaplains. But I had him for a week and we were okay. But what do you think about this? I mean, what do you think should be the role of a Christian in the military, in combat? Mike, you served in the military for many years, and you on active duty. And have you ever had to wrestle with these questions? What should be the role of Christians in the military? So I wanted to throw that out for comments by our panel and questions from our audience.
I never wrestled with it. I was dedicated to my job in serving the country, and frankly, the more I thought about being a Christian, as I became more educated and understood the Christian theory of just war, it became clear to me that that theory has saved millions of lives over centuries and decades.
And pause there for a second. Are any of you familiar with the just war theory? Okay, one person here. Can we, and myself, do you want to expand on it, or do you?
Well, there's two parts to it. I mean, it was developed by St. Augustine, I think,
Yes.
and Thomas Aquinas. I mean, the just war theory says that there are times that it is justified to go to war, and that is, if you look back through history, largely the human condition. And the first part is justifying going to war, planning to go to war, doing the things you need to do to make sure that you have rules in place and that you are doing things that you need to do to defend your country in the best way that you can. The second piece is, after you go to war, how do you conduct that war? That's the nasty part. That's the part that, after the first shot's fired, you lose control. You know, the famous Mike Tyson comment, everybody's got a plan till they're punched in the mouth. Things go down sideways. So, but having those rules in place versus centuries ago when the way to go to war was to annihilate everyone makes a difference.
Right, so the just war theory, as you mentioned, has a list of criteria that should be in place for it to be considered a just war. And so what the United States has tried to do in other countries is, when we go to war, is we try to establish, that the criteria are being met so that this war qualifies as a just war. We should not, for example, go to war for economic gain. We're not going to go there to go steal your oil. We're not going to go there we're not going to create a war to prop up the American economy. We're not going to, we want your land, we want your resources. That is not a just war. It has to be declared by a competent authority. In other words, it can't be some, terrorist group. That would not be a just war. It has to be declared by a government. There has to be a defensive role in the war. That is that we're self-defending. We've been attacked, and now we need to end that power that is attacking us. Another competent government, hopefully. We are targeting the right people. We don't want to target civilians, for example. We want to use the right amount of weaponry to accomplish the job. We don't want to drop an atomic bomb when it's been simply bullets firing from the other side. So, we want to match the kind of opposition to accomplish the job. And once we've killed the enemy, or the enemy is surrendering, we take them and surrender. If they're surrendering, we don't kill them. We imprison them in prisoners of war camps. So many people think that World War II was fought in a just manner. It was government against government. There were POW camps. We didn't try to target purposely civilians, but even then, there were civilian targets. And so in many cases, as he was alluding to, once the war begins, there are going to be sometimes civilian casualties, which are regretted. But today, we go out of our way oftentimes to avoid targeting those civilians. So if you can look it up, and there's all these other criteria about, before you go to war, having all the right elements in place, after you've in war, and now they're developing this criteria around what after the war has been won. For example, when Iraq fell, and we tried to nation build there, how do you do that in a just and a proper manner? So it's a critical part of what has guided Christianity in terms of being able to execute and be a part of war. Because, let's face it, the moment Christianity was birthing, and we were admitting Roman soldiers into the Christian faith, we had to say, well, wait a minute, how can I be a Roman soldier and be a Christian at the same time? And so we had to develop some sort of, and that's what St. Augustine was able to do, was able to sort of develop that, and it has been expanded on and developed over the centuries. And so today, military ethicists, I don't know, did you go to the Naval War College? National. Both of us have attended, I attended the Naval War College and have a degree from the Naval War College as well, so I've studied strategy and policy as well. And it's something that we certainly study very carefully about how to wage a strategic and just war that doesn't kill innocent civilians. And so it's something that military strategy leaders, ethicists, theologians, and church leaders struggle with. Today, the Conference on Catholic Bishops struggle with this, the House of Bishops struggle with this, and whenever there is a potential for war, there's always a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, and that's a healthy thing to do. That debate is essential to guide us as a nation in being able to know whether to support our leadership in engaging this war. And so it's a critical part of who we are and what we're supposed to be about. I want to close with any questions that the audience may have before we part company. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Mike's wife, and I apologize for coming in late. I didn't hear what he said initially.
I said you were very smart.
Beautiful woman.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do know that during the course of his command officer tours that he had to draw on his Christian faith, because he had to do some very difficult things. I remember specifically I had to tell a sailor who was very, very far away from home that his child had died. And some things are very hard. When you lead a group of people who are thousands and thousands of miles away, you have to draw on your faith. I also would like to say, like in today's dealings, being labeled a military family isn't always positive. Military families are people, just like everybody. Like Spring was saying, when somebody new comes to St. Bart's, we need to find out about them, not pigeonhole them. Oh, they're military. I mean, we don't have this huge neon sign on us. Military people. I was a teacher for a long time, and I actually was in meetings where fellow teachers would say, oh, well, they're a military kid. And it's got kind of a negative label sometimes, which isn't really terrific. So just consider military people as people like the rest of you.
I can vouch for that. Since we've been back from Japan, it's funny, when you go overseas, you feel more military because you've got to huddle together with the other families on base and got to figure things out. But when you come back, like I go to the base like once every few months. And I go to Albertsons, I go to everything's here in Rancho Bernardo, and I sometimes forget I'm a military family until I use my TRICARE benefits, but, yeah, we're just regular people. And,
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know if this got covered, I apologize for being late too, but something, reservists, reserve families, that's also kind of a different beast, and forgive me if you kind of touched on that. So when they're active duty, everybody's kind of huddled together. You have a command, you have a spouses network. If you're a reservist and you say, you know, that person gets called up as an individual augmentee, and they might be the only one in their unit who's been called up, very different story. You may not be near a military base. I mean, we are here in San Diego, but those support structures and that you know, the framework doesn't exist to the same degree as it does for the active duty people. So that's just kind of another variation, something you have to look for. And I think, you know, when I got recalled for a year as a reservist, and it was, I think, much more jarring than being deployed as an active duty person where you've got months and months of workups.
Right.
It's just you're in your civilian job one day and literally
Boom.
2 weeks later you're
Right.
overseas.
Yeah.
So just something to look for.
Yes.
One of the things my father did, in terms of being a spiritual person was, I don't know how he did it, but he never drank as a sailor, and,
That's a miracle.
I know, it was amazing, but he kind of formed a group of guys that had families, and they played cards together, bridge, or
Yeah.
whatever it was. They had a place to be together and not respond and do some of the things that other guys
Right.
were doing.
Good.
So sometimes just your vocation as a father, as a family member, and just doing what you're supposed to do at work is a spiritual statement, and I think people underestimate that even in your neighborhood, you know, that you're a military person and you live an honorable way when you come home with your family and have been faithful. I mean, those kinds of things are choices you've made, and, you know, give yourself a little credit, you know, so. And also, I think, there was a lot of prayer that you kind of forget, you know, that you pray for each other and the families are praying like crazy for you. So, I think it's a faith builder in a lot of ways, because you're kind of a little more on the edge. It's not ordinary time when somebody's away, and, so there's that constant tension when somebody's missing and somebody's separated. So, I just wanna give you guys a little credit for being so,
Thank you.
such a good witness to us.
Thank you. JD, last question.
It's actually just a quick comment, and I know there are others
Yeah.
in the room who have much better command of scripture than I do, but it seems to me that in the telling of the gospel story, that the Romans, I mean, Rome was the enemy, right? To the people, to the people who are central to the story. But it seems to me that every mention of a Roman soldier is a positive portion of the telling of the gospel story. The soldiers were critical in the way it all played out, and critical and important through conversion, through, you know, the soldier who recognized
Right.
Christ on the cross as God.
Right, because a lot of people were converting from Rome to the faith. And so the gospel writers painted the Romans in a positive light.
And it seems to me that the soldiers themselves are, not only are they not cast in a negative light, but it's the opposite.
Exactly. Correct. Absolutely correct. Well, listen, yes.
Oh, just
Chris.
one last thing. I heard some conversation earlier about the important work of connecting newcomers to folks that might be a good friend or possible companion as they get connected to St. Bart. If you're interested in doing that type of work, we do have a group that thinks about that, and so let me know. Happy to take any help with getting people connected. And that was really well put by Spring.
Thank you very much for attending our forum this morning.
Thank you.